Welcome to the Unknown Webcast. Just in case you missed it in the past, you should know that I am so conservative I have trouble turning left while I'm driving. This is broadcast number 28, and Cynthia Hampton is our guest again on this edition of the Unknown Webcast. This is part 2 of Exchanging False Teachers. My name is Don Vino, and I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast. Our senior researcher is Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of tonight's webcast.
Well, good evening from sunny Florida, where we just dodged a hurricane not too long ago. Our sponsors tonight for the Unknown Webcast begin with the World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop destination for dubious doctrines, half-baked heresies, and other notions whose time has gone. World's End Theology Outlet. And the Bible Buffet. It's not your father's Sunday morning worship experience. It's the Bible Buffet. And now we're back to Don and Cynthia. How are you, Cynthia?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, you gave yourself a little different background, I think, tonight from what we had last time, which is okay.
Did we do a background check on this person? We should make sure.
Background. We're going to do a background check. Let's see. I don't know. So when we spoke last time, we talked about your going from New Age into the Watchtower through your mother. In fact, we were just talking offline some years ago. Luis Palau Evangelistic Association did the I Found It campaigns. And during that time, you said your mother was already studying with the Watchtower with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they called. What happened with that phone call?
Yes, they called and they said something to her like, "Have you heard about our I Found It campaign?" And she says, "Well, I'm not interested because I've already found the truth. I've already found the truth, and I'm studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, so I don't need your I Found It campaign."
Oh my, okay.
Do you remember the I Lost It bumper stickers back then? They had those too.
No, I lost the bumper sticker.
This is back in the days of bumper sticker theology and evangelism.
Yes.
So when you we left a lot of uncovered territory last time, didn't we? Which I apologize for personally, but I did enjoy the territory we did cover.
You always take us through such scenic areas, Ron.
I try to get off the beaten path, and that sometimes when you get back onto the beaten path, you feel pretty beaten. So,
so before going into the Watchtower, you had some kind of a belief in God.
Yeah.
While you were in the Watchtower, you had some kind of a belief in God. When you left the Watchtower, did you have a belief in God, or did leaving the organization in your mind also mean leaving God?
No, I don't think that it meant leaving God. I still believed in God. I just didn't want an organization to be accountable to. So when I left the Watchtower for 2 years, I went back to doing kind of new agey things, meditations and astrology, and I had a teacher in one of my psych classes. It was normal personality, and he was very new agey, and he always had the class lie down, and he would take us through what he called a relaxation exercise, where he kind of said, to clear your mind, and to imagine doing this and imagine doing that, or imagine that you're on a white cloud floating away, and I found that really interesting, and I kind of liked it. And
you didn't imagine there's no heaven, above you only sky. How many things did you imagine when you were doing this?
Well, it was kind of like visualization exercises in a way, and
Okay.
to visualize different things, and that it was supposed to happen for you, where you would visualize doing different things. Maybe it was something for your career, or maybe it was something, for your family. You were supposed to visualize it and think about it actually happening. And supposedly it was supposed to come, come as a fact into your life. The more you
really?
realized it, yeah, yeah. And then what's funny is that I find this New Age practice. It's almost very close to the Christian, Christian, and I'm putting that in quotes.
Air quotes, official
Name
air
it
quotes.
name it and claim it kind of thing,
Yeah.
Where you claim to do this and you claim that and claim this, and God's supposed to answer your prayer and bring this to you.
Say it, don't spray it, name it and claim it. Okay.
So I was very involved in, just sort of, I liked the New Age kind of thing. There wasn't any accountability. I didn't have to join anything. There were a lot of New Age ideas floating around in the town that I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. In fact, there was a guru there. I never went to see the guru. Some of my old friends went to see this guru, and they got all involved in that stuff. But I had no use for a guru, because coming out of the watchtower, I didn't want to follow a leader. I didn't want to follow another type of leader, like a guru. So I just kind of did my own thing, and I did my meditations and visualization exercises, and of course I went right back into astrology and that kind of thing. So for 2 years, it was just pretty much that. And I had a friend that kept inviting me to church. So when I finally went to church, then I little by little stopped the New Agey stuff.
So you were kind of keeping God at arm's length, it sounds like. You're kind of, I don't want to get too close to this God person. I mean, you were out there floating around in astrology land and living in Tucson, where there are a lot of New Age ideas. I thought Tucson itself was a New Age idea, but I guess it's just a place where they live. So what were we going to say, Don?
I have no idea. Oh, I know. As she's talking about this, I was thinking about what, I don't know what the percentages are, but Jehovah's Witnesses who cease being Jehovah's Witnesses, they have already, they've rejected anything to do with the church, because the Watchtower basically persuaded them the church is completely false. That then instead go into New Age kinds of things. Wicca seems to be an attraction to some of them, and we had a conference some years ago we did at Wheaton Bible College, Wheaton College, right? Wheaton College, in the Billy Graham Center, and Bill Hunsberger was doing a workshop, Why Not Burn Witches, and so you have all these ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in there. One of them stood up to start debating him. As it turned out, she was a practicing Wiccan at that point.
She wanted to be burned? What was?
No, she, the whole object of that particular question is to point out that relativism doesn't really work. But my point really was that here we had someone who was a Jehovah's Witness, who walked out of the Watchtower, didn't go to any kind of a church, but instead moved into New Age practices, in this particular case, Wicca. And I think for the same reasons, maybe, Cynthia, that you were enumerating, that there's no accountability there. You can sort of make up your own religious ritual and do things that seem to be more religiously fun and experiential, like laying on the floor and meditating, for example.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like you want to be spiritual, but you don't want it to be come from a church or from what somebody tells you to do. I think that's the thing. And I've met a lot of ex-witness women who have joined Wicca, and they practice what they call magic, white magic. And I found Wiccanism to be very interesting and kind of desirable when I first left the Watchtower. I never actually got into it, but I know that a lot of people have done it, and of course a lot of them call themselves pagans. So they're, just they're kind of out there in well, I don't know, la la land a little bit, because they're going back to a lot of this Native American stuff too. The Native American religion.
Animism, right? Sure. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, what strikes me about going from the Watchtower to any of those things, New Age, Wicca, is that the Watchtower is a very rationalistic type of faith. It is very much in your head. Here are the arguments. They don't call themselves a church. They're an organization. They pile on all this reading for you to do with these questions at the bottom. They take you through a very self-conscious indoctrination program. And it's all very mental. It's all very cerebral. Not a lot of opportunity to explore feelings and think and visualize. You don't visualize in the Watchtower, do you? They don't say, okay, close your eyes and think about Jehovah's kingdom. Okay, you don't do that, right? So is this like kind of breaking out now and testing the waters and different things that you haven't been able to try before? Is that what's going on?
I think that's what a lot of them do. I think that's what I was doing. I was just I was kind of going back to, what I was doing before, in a way. And, I didn't want to go back to the Catholic Church because I didn't trust it. And, for so long in the Watchtower, we were told, how bad the church was and how bad the Pope was and how they taught nothing but lies. And the lady that studied with my mother, every week she'd bring an article that was critical and negative about the Catholic Church. So I had no desire to go back to the Catholic Church at the time. So I, went into this, neo-paganism kind of thing, doing these little meditations and visualization exercises, and, still, reading astrology and, trying to understand myself because of the sign I was born under. And I was very much trying to find out who I was. I didn't understand the concept, as Christians, we believe that we are created in God's image. And as a Jehovah's Witness, you're not really told that. You're not really told that you're important and created in God's image. I wanted that feeling of having to, feeling a little, having this little experience with myself and trying to get to know myself, or, finding myself, because I felt so lost, when I was in the Watchtower, and I was lost when I got out. So I just didn't know where the answers were. I had a bad experience in the Watchtower. When I was married the first time, the man that I was married to was physically abusive, and they wouldn't disfellowship him for that, but how they disfellowshipped him for smoking a few years later. So it was just a bad time, looking at, how men treated women in the Watchtower. I wanted nothing to do with a man controlling my life, or men controlling my life. I wanted to do it on my own. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The thing that intrigues me here is that they did a good job of, I guess they would think they did a pretty good job of warning you about the dangers of the Catholic Church. But how good a job did they do of warning you about astrology and Wicca? Is it that they weren't emphasizing those things? They didn't instill a fear or, a dislike of them, so that when you got out, you felt more free to go in that direction than you did to go back to the Catholic Church? What happened there?
I felt way more fear about the Catholic Church and any other Christian church. I had way more fear about that, and the government, of course, because the government they called the beast. And so I didn't want anything to do with the government, and I was afraid to vote still for a while, and very afraid to go to church. And I thought, well, I'll just stay away from church, And because it was a frightening thing, because according to the Watchtower, they were so bad. So I felt like I had nowhere to go, and kind of the New Age thing seemed like a good compromise, I guess.
And they didn't really warn you too much or as much about that, did they?
No, I don't recall
Okay.
about the neo-pagan religions, the modern stuff they have today. It seemed like it was mostly derailing or the churches, and they didn't want their people leaving and joining any kind of Christian church.
Interesting. So in a way, what you're describing is that it's easier to leave the Watchtower than to get the Watchtower to leave you for a while. You left and then for a long time after you're gone, you still have these things inside you that are what you were indoctrinated in.
Right, that's the fear and phobia.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, you did all this. You learned relaxation techniques. Did you expand your mind in any kind of educational pursuits or anything? Or
yeah, I was going to college at the time. I was majoring in accounting. So yeah, I did get educated.
Okay. So, and you liked the New Age movement because you didn't have to answer to anybody. You could find your own path, go your own way. So,
well, those two things almost seem to be in opposition to each other in some ways. Accounting assumes certain things are true in order to do your job. It's logical, it's consistent. The New Age assumes nothing is true. You just make it up as you go.
Yeah, but in my own mind at the time, it's like, well, I was doing some, spiritual things, didn't have to be logical.
Right.
You had to just have a good feeling about it, and as long as you felt good about it, it must be good, right?
it can't be wrong if it feels so right. You light up my life, So I was listening to somebody today say that this whole idea that we get the truth by our feelings is really new. You don't find that in the Bible, but that's kind of where they left you. You had to kind of feel your way to what you're going to go do next. So I had a question, and I guess it was, did you have to wait until you became a Christian before you could see the problems with being in the New Age, with being in all these things? Is that finally when it hit you?
It finally hit me, somewhat after I became a Christian, because when I first became a Christian, I really didn't understand everything. I understood I didn't like the Watchtower. I went to church, and I did accept Jesus, but I didn't know that I would have to, that all these other things were really in opposition to what the Bible teaches and what Jesus wants us to do. So it took me a while to kind of get rid of the belief in astrology, because I used to follow that very closely. I would buy books and magazines on astrology, and so I would have this whole horoscope, for the whole year. It wasn't just read the little thing in the newspaper. I used to invest my money in horoscopes for myself.
Wow.
Okay, so you're in the church now. You're working yourself. You're being worked out of the New Age in astrology and those kinds of things. How did your doctrinal views that you gained from being a Jehovah's Witness, how did that become undone as you had become a believer and gotten involved in a church?
Well, I worked on undoing the Jehovah's Witness things first.
Okay.
And as I would debunk one doctrine, I'd go to another. So I knew a few things when I first became a Christian because I had that one friend in church in Tucson who showed me a few things. But then a few months later that year, I moved to California, and I didn't have anyone here to, guide me. So I found Walter Martin on the Bible Answer, and I found a Christian station here in Los Angeles, and I started listening to it. And then I just by chance, I turned on the Bible Answer Man. I'm like, the Bible Answer Man? I said, who is this guy? And he was talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm like, boom! I was just fascinated with everything he said. I'm like, he's telling the truth. Now that guy, he is really speaking the truth because he knew what he was talking about when it came to Jehovah's Witnesses. And then he knew what he was talking about when he started talking about Mormons, because I'd already known a little bit about Mormons. And so every day I would just turn him on and listen to him, teaching, the differences between the cults and Christianity. And so I was like in that movie, Johnny Five, Short Circuit, and I was like, more input, more input, more input. I really wanted to learn about this. Then I got his book, Kingdom of the Cults, and I just soaked up as much as I could. And the other thing that he talked about the New Age, and then that's when it started to kind of click in, the New Age, and he talked about Marianne Williamson and Course in Miracles, and all these other things that I kind of touched on a little bit when I was doing my New Agey stuff, and I realized how wrong it was to practice astrology and to do all these meditation exercises as I was doing. So I give credit to being able to listen to Walter Martin during the 1980s and guiding me on the right path there. Not only was I able to debunk all the Jehovah's Witnesses stuff, I was able to debunk all the New Age stuff from him.
All right. Don, we can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
I'm back. I'm back.
Oh, good.
I turned my microphone off because I've been getting messages that some people are having difficult time getting linked up. So I was trying to investigate that, and I didn't want to be bothering you all while I was doing that.
Oh, you're back. But you were saying something.
Yeah, it wasn't probably important.
Oh, okay.
But did you say something about the Course in Miracles? Did I hear that?
Yeah. I started listening to Walter Martin. He was, debunking a lot of the stuff that Marianne Williamson, had written about. So, I hadn't read that. So I knew that was something that that I wasn't going to do, or something that I really wasn't going to get interested in, but I'd heard about it before. But after becoming a Christian and learning from Dr. Martin how all these things are incorrect and are in conflict with the Bible, it really struck a chord in me, and I realized at that time that I could no longer do any of that stuff.
So it seems to. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it wasn't as though, somebody was saying, oh, no, you can't do that. Now that you're a Christian, you got to put all this stuff away. It had to make sense to me in my own mind. And, when I was in the Watchtower, it was more like, no, you can't do this. This is pagan, that's bad, this is bad. If the Watchtower says it's bad, then it's bad. But with what Walter Martin was saying, and he was explaining everything really well scripturally, it really made sense at that time.
So would one of the differences be, just out of curiosity, that with...
Yeah, there's a little feedback.
I'm getting echoing here. With Walter Martin, that you had the opportunity to listen to him, analyze it, think about it, and agree or disagree. Whereas with the Watchtower, you had to just accept it unquestioningly. Did that make a difference in how you viewed your relationship with God?
Absolutely. because the Watchtower doesn't give you the chance to really think about it. It's their way or the highway, take it or leave it. And I noticed when Dr. Walter Martin was explaining things, he explained it in such a way I really understood it. And, you know, and I accepted it because it made so much sense. And, you know, I could actually look up scripture and understand what he was talking about.
So really, you came out of an organization that stressed conformity, uniformity, you know, do as we say. It's almost like you had to have an implicit faith in what they said. You know, you might, if you didn't understand the arguments that they were making, or if you didn't even hear the arguments, it didn't really matter. Just believe in what they say. An unquestioning, implicit faith, which ironically is exactly what the reformers, you know, of the Reformation rebelled against. They were told that they needed to have an implicit faith in what the church taught, unquestioning. That would even save them. That would be saving faith for them if they would just believe everything the church said, and do it, of course. And now you've moved into this realm of freedom. And in this realm of freedom, where they probably would have warned you, oh, you're going to go in a way that's contrary to God, instead you found yourself being pulled back toward what the Word of God was teaching, in the freedom of the Spirit. The Spirit, you know, God Himself was drawing you back to Himself. He didn't need an organization. He didn't need rules and regulations and all that. Does that sound like your experience?
That's pretty much. And because of listening to Dr. Martin on the radio, it inspired me to really do a lot of research. So I went down to my public library and I checked out stacks of books on theology and Christian history. And I really wanted to know what Christian history was all about, because in the Watchtower, they give you version of what Christian history is.
They show us at our best, right? They always pick out the really nice stuff about us to show, right?
and so I wanted to know what, you know, how did Christianity come to be? How did it really start? What was the real purpose of the Nicene Council? What were the different you know, councils that happened? How did, you know, I read about Luther and Reformation and Calvin, and learned the difference between Calvinism and Arminianism. And I needed to learn all this stuff because I wasn't satisfied just learning a little. I needed to have that background in history behind me.
Okay.
You know, there's just a couple of observations. One is on the Watchtower versus the Roman Catholic Church, and that is the organization that the Watchtower most fights against, most ridicules, is the Roman Catholic Church, because of the two-class system, the priest and the laity, because of kind of their works orientation, the idea that they are the sole dispenser of salvation. And yet, that is exactly what the Watchtower teaches. You have a two-class system. You have the anointed class, 144,000. They'll be in heaven. The Bible is written only for the 144,000. No one else can understand it without the 144,000's explanation. And then you have the other sheep. Salvation comes only through the Watchtower. In fact, for the rank and file, their salvation is dependent solely on how they treat the anointed class. So it is an organization that has become almost exactly like the organization that they most rail against. That's one observation. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah, and in fact, well, the Watchtower requires even more works than the Catholic Church does. You know, the Catholic Church doesn't require the kind of works that the Watchtower does. They don't require you to be working all the time and turning in time and going door to door and doing all these other things. You know, the Watchtower puts a much bigger burden on people. the Catholic Church, in comparison, I mean, yeah, you've got the sacraments and things like that, and they want you to go to confession and so forth and so on, but that burden is nothing compared to the burden that the Watchtower puts upon their members.
How many hours a month did you go out door to door?
Oh, wow. For a while I was pioneering and doing the 100 hours a month.
Wow.
I did that, and I look at today's Jehovah's Witnesses, and I think, boy, today's Jehovah's Witnesses are wimps. They only need something like 60 hours a month or 50 hours a month to pioneer, and they get to stand out in the mall and set up their little tables and kiosks and air-conditioned malls now and count that as time. Well, I went door to door in 100-degree weather.
Yeah, I've seen some of those kiosks. It's like little booths or something that they've set up. It's like you have to go to them now. They don't come to you. It's like
an easy way to count time. By the way, it is time to talk to have a word from our sponsor.
Speaking of time. Okay, well, we want to hear from our friends at World's End Theology Outlet because they have a question that they want to ask you, and that is, have you found yourself fondly reminiscing about years ago when the Jehovah's Witnesses who came to your door would relieve you of your fear of hell, only to turn around and threaten you with Armageddon? And if you're a Jehovah's Witness, do you miss the days when God's organization would let you get to your fire and brimstone messages by where you harass your neighbors that their complete destruction was right around the corner? Do you miss those times? Well, now you can relive those days with our Watchtower Society Armageddon calendars. These calendars will help you recall all the relief you felt when once again God's organization completely dropped the prophetic ball. These calendars come with a complete satisfaction guarantee, which is more than we can say for the original predictions, and they're only available at the World's End Theology Outlet. They're beautiful, aren't they? This week only at World's End Theology Outlet. Okay, we're back. Get those World's End Theology, get those Armageddon calendars. Yeah, we're running out of them. Especially since
you're running out of time there, right?
Especially since we're having a really good, solid prediction of Armageddon now in about 40 years, right?
Yeah.
So
they have a 100% rate of being wrong. Yes, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. How many things can claim that?
All the time.
So the other observation I was going to make, and this is, of course, not a scientific poll research or anything. It's just my observation, and it's kind of bearing itself out in you as well as others that I have worked with. And that is Jehovah's Witnesses, those who have left the Jehovah's Witnesses, even if they spend some transitional time doing something else like New Age or another cult group or something, when they become a believer and they get involved in a church, it seems to me one of the first questions they ask is, why isn't anybody doing anything? Did that strike you like that? Why are they not doing like serious Bible study? Why aren't they going door to door? Don't they really care about this stuff? I mean, you're as a Jehovah's Witness, you're used to doing things.
I was glad nobody was going door to door.
I'm not saying necessarily door to door, but some active involvement. It seems like that's why I'm asking. What was your view on that? Because I know others who have said, does the church even really care about these issues? I was involved all the time as a Jehovah's Witness. I was going to a Calvary chapel for a while here and involved in some Bible study groups over there. And, a lot of them were, I don't know, like fluff Christians. It's like they knew John 3:16 and a few key verses, and that's all they talked about. I knew a lot of scripture from having been in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I knew how to debunk it. And so, when I would tell them, well, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness and I learned to become a Christian. Now,
wanted to hear my testimony. So I would kind of try to inspire them to learn more about the Bible and learn how to refute the cults. So I tried to bring that to them and light a fire under them, because so many of them were just sort of, oh yes, let's have our nice little Bible study, and we'll have our cup of coffee here and our little donuts, and we'll just be happy and just enjoy the Lord.
One of the things I've noticed when I've tried to have conversations with Jehovah's Witnesses is that once in a while there'll be a witness in the room who has a book in his hand, and if they're struggling with answering one of my statements or dealing with one of the verses I've brought up or something like that, he'll pull out this book and he'll refer to it, or he doesn't necessarily refer to it, but you can see him studying up, getting his answer out of it. It seemed to be some kind of a reference book that was kind of like maybe encyclopedic in nature or alphabetically listed topics. Do you know what that was, or do you have an idea of what that might have been?
Well, back when I was a Jehovah's Witness, we used to have the Mixture of All Things book, and then they've updated it. And I can't remember what book they use now, but it's kind of their little reference guide, to be able to refute people at the door who bring up a certain subject. And so they look up that topical subject and then find the scriptures and it lists the scriptures that will refute that person's talking about that topic.
Okay. So it's maybe not the Mixture of All Things book anymore. It might be something else.
Yeah, and I can't remember what it is they have.
No question, no idea, Don?
I don't know the names of all their latest books.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the newest one is. They do have one that has replaced it. I don't recall what the title is, though. It's been a while since I looked at that stuff.
Maybe one of our viewers can type in a comment and let us know what that is.
I have several things I have to respond to, so I'm going to turn my microphone off while you two carry on for a moment.
Oh, we like carrying on. I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
Ron?
Yes?
Ron, I think it's called Reasoning from the Scriptures.
Okay.
Something like that.
All right. So you became like an autodidact. That's a word. You self-educated yourself. You just started soaking up things. The first place it sounds like you went to is your local public library?
Yes.
Did you eventually find other better resources than that? Because I would think that might be a little bit limited after a while. You're going to get a lot of books that are commonly available in secular bookstores and things like that. But what did you find any better sources, or was that good enough?
Well, as far as Christian history and everything, yeah, it was pretty good.
Okay.
There were a lot of Christian books in the library, at least the library that we have here.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great.
So I was able to bring home stacks and stacks of books, and then of course because of Walter Martin, I would drive down to Orange County and go down to the Christian Research Institute and see what they had available.
So did you kind of stand? Now, by this time, you are a member of a local church? No,
not really. I went to Calvary Chapel. They don't have any membership there.
Okay.
And I kind of liked that because for a long time, I was afraid to become a member of the church.
Yeah.
That phobia of, once you sign your name on the dotted line, then they'll have full control over your life.
Full control. They tell you what to do day and night.
Right. So, and at least Calvary Chapel, and I have to give them credit where credit is due. They did teach, sound doctrine there, and I was able to, learn quite a bit there from their Sunday morning sermons and tapes and things like that. And, they had a good bookstore over there too. So I would, buy books on theology there. And, I kept self-educating myself. I just I love to read and I love to learn.
Did the word fellowship. I don't even know. Did Jehovah's Witnesses even use that word, fellowship? Is that something that they talk about?
Fellowship? No, they talk about disfellowship. So,
so you didn't know what you were getting out of what disfellowship, but where was the fellowship? You know, what? So
we talk about disfellowship. So, you know, when you take the dis out of the fellowship, even the word fellowship is kind of a negative sounding word, because it's like, oh, disfellowship. I don't like fellowship either, because you could put a dis in front of it and get kicked out.
So well, what did they have a name for? Just kind of like being together? And I mean, I see Jehovah's Witnesses in my neighborhood going door to door, and then at a certain time every Saturday, I think it's around 10:30 to 11, if I'm hanging out at a particular Dunkin' Donuts, they all converge there, you know, after going door to door. I'll see a couple of vans pull up and all these people in suits and dresses walk in and get their donuts and coffee. So there's something going on where they hang out together.
So the fellas are in dresses, or just the?
Yeah, it depends. Well, this day and age, you know, I don't know what the Watchtower says about, you know, that kind of thing. But the so they you know, they do have a socializing aspect. And I've been in restaurants where I've been so close to the next table, you know, you can't help but hear. And it's always the same conversation. You know, it's always like, you know, you're talking to, you know, you're listening to a Jehovah's Witness when of course they use terms like Kingdom Hall, and they ask questions like, you know, so, you know, do you find that you're being regular in attendance at the Kingdom Halls? And then of course the answer is, how can I not? I just can't. I just have to get more and more of this stuff. I'm just soaking it all up. I've actually heard that repeated times, almost word for word, from different. It's almost like we're programmed to say this. Are there things that they're programmed to say to each other?
Well, the language is all loaded. I mean, they do have their own language, you know, Kingdom Hall and service meeting and book study and out in service, pioneer, elders, overseers.
It seems like not only do they have a common vocabulary, but they have almost like a common way of talking to each other, common topics that they stick to when they're with each other.
Well,
that they don't.
And it's also what they practice. I mean, they really do. They really do. The Watchtower is good at training their people in the arguments that they will be using on a consistent and regular basis, to the point that they all say exactly the same thing at about the same time. I'll never forget, some years ago, I was talking with a Jehovah's Witness who said this to me. I was in search, and I checked out all the world's religions, and I came to realize that the Watchtower was the only ones who were really telling the truth. And I hadn't really heard that before from a Jehovah's Witness, and we talked a little bit about some other things. Then a week or two later, I was with another Jehovah's Witness who said to me, are you ready? I checked out all the world's religions.
Right.
And as he's going through this, I thought, okay, I've heard this before. I have a question. Maybe you can help me with. What was it specifically about the Urantia book that you realized it was wrong? And he went cross-eyed. And I said, okay, well, it's kind of a small group, so you may not have heard about it. What is it about the Buddhism exactly that caused you to realize that they weren't the truth? And I said, well, I didn't really check out Buddhism. I said, okay, so how is it that you checked out all of the religions that you did check out? He said, well, in the Watchtower. And I thought,
right.
I said, well, do you think that could have been biased, maybe?
Yeah, well, the Watchtower does the research for them, and then kind of like feeds it to them like baby food, you know? You're spoon fed what they want you to know, and that's all they want you to know. And they tell you, you know, and it's been written in the Watchtower before, you're having to do heavy research is unnecessary because they've already done the work for you. All you have to do is go back into their publications and look it up.
So in other words, these individual witnesses did not research all the world's religions. They read somebody else's research into all the world religions.
They
Right.
read what the Watchtower told them about
Yeah.
religions.
Right, which can be okay. I mean, if you have a good, reliable researcher, I mean, we have that in Christian circles. You can't really check out every single religion. And what we, Midwest Christian Outreach, one of the things we key in is let's work with worldviews. And then as you're looking at a religion, figure out which worldview it fits in. Because if the worldview falsifies itself, then the particular religion is automatically falsified within that worldview. That makes it a little easier. But if you're going to want to know about a variety of religions, you can go to them, and you could spend, 80 years learning about 8 or 10 religions really well and not get all of them. Which is why, if you have good researchers, the point I think I have about the Watchtower is they are biased. They are not good researchers.
No, they're not. Terrible researchers. and they don't give you any sources either. They'll, pick and choose something out of context that a religious leader may have said, but then when you go to the actual context of the quote, you find that it didn't mean that at all.
Oh yeah.
Right. We play a game around here called Connect the Dots. It's the ellipsis, the 3 dots that they use a lot in the Watchtower. Will give you a partial quote, ... before and after it. That means it's a portion of a quote from a larger statement. And when you go back and connect those dots to the statement and read them in context, very often the statement says exactly the opposite of what the Watchtower is claiming.
Exactly.
Well, here's an example. This is the New World Translation of the Christian Greek Scriptures from 1950. Okay, this is long before I was born. Well,
that's old light. They have a new one now.
Well, yeah, it might be old light, but it's interesting how they have this picture of the man being put on a stake here. Mm-hmm. And if you read the text, this is proof that Jesus was, as they would say, impaled on a stake. He wasn't crucified on a cross. The problem is that if you were to actually go to this book, and I think it's now available online, you'll find out that what the book actually says is this was but one of many ways that Romans crucified people. This is the only one that just involves a single beam. All the other ones involve.
Well, look closely at the picture. There's more than, it's not just a single beam. There's at least 2 beams there.
Oh, okay. Well, Don, I'm sorry, I closed it. Where are the 2 beams?
Isn't there one that he's kind of sitting on?
Oh, there's they make a little seat for him. Yeah.
A little seat for him, and then there's a sign. Yeah, there's a sign above. So you have at least 3 pieces of material involved with this torture stake, right? But
they don't. But they want to not have a crossbeam, and the whole point of a lot of this is not that you think, okay, so what? So you're being nitpicky. You're finding fault with relatively minor things, but what you find is they will say, no, this isn't minor. This is very big because the cross was actually a pagan symbol, and so what they're trying to do is to drive a wedge between you and Orthodox Christianity by constantly looking for evidences of paganism, evidences that that whatever it is that you used to believe actually did not come from the Bible, but it came from paganism, including the very idea of a cross. So one time I said to a Jehovah's Witness who was pushing this on me, I said, tell me, did the people who came up with this method, of execution, did they get it from the Bible or did they get it from paganism? And they said, well, from paganism, of course. So then what you're telling me is that it's wrong to believe in it because it's from paganism, but it was invented by pagans, so that it was from paganism. So which one So which one am I supposed to believe here? Because I don't get the problem. In fact, I think you have the problem. So, anyways, that's something I just thought I'd bring up.
Okay.
I had a hard time with the cross too for a while, and I didn't even, and it took me up until recently, and I realized I don't even have a cross hanging in my house. And I thought, and I bought one recently. I went over to the Calvary Chapel bookstore and bought one that I can hang up. But that fear of the cross had slipped over into my life. Not that I wasn't afraid of the cross all these years, but I just never thought about buying one until recently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It takes a long time to shake some of the Watchtower teachings out of your brain. They're sort of there even when you don't think about it. I know our former Florida branch director, Diane Golson, she was a Jehovah's Witness for 43 years. Yeah, 43 years.
Wow.
And then when she left and came to the faith, she decided she would work as hard or harder for the rest of her life for the Lord Jesus as she did for the Watchtower. And then as she worked with us, every once in a while over the years, some doctrine would come up and I would hear her talk about it. I go, Diane, that's a Watchtower doctrine. And she would want to, kind of fight me on it. And I would walk her through why it's not biblical. And it sometimes takes a long time to even realize how deeply this stuff has impacted you.
Yeah, I've known people who are, have been Jehovah's Witnesses and then they become Christians. And one of the things I was talking to one person and she said that she just couldn't get over the fact that the Star of Bethlehem, she thought it was something that Satan put up there.
Really?
Yeah. And she thought that it was something that actually that God didn't do, that it was something of Satan, because that it led the Magi to the young Jesus.
I
Okay,
remember.
so you're going on this sort of religious adventure or tour. Let's say you go from the New Age to the Watchtower, from the Watchtower to the New Age, and then eventually to a true faith in Jesus Christ as fully God, fully human, and the doctrine of the Trinity started making some sense as you listened to Walter Martin. So you really did have kind of a spiritual buffet that you were going through, and some churches actually offer a kind of a spiritual buffet. Ron, you might want to tell us about that.
Well, it would lead us right into our next sponsor, and they have some questions for you. First of all, are you tired of hearing all about the difference between the milk of the Word and the meat of the Word? Are you wondering when your church is going to get around to serving the ice cream and cheesecake of the Word? Does your pastor take the whole Bible thing just way too seriously? Well, it's time for you to check out the Bible Buffet. It is not your father's worship experience. At the Bible Buffet, everything centers around your comfort and your ease. Everything is gluten-free, trans fat free, and truth claim free. At the Bible Buffet, you'll find all kinds of great meals prepared just for whatever it is you want to believe. This week, we have regular Sunday specials that include Aryan appetizers, Sabellian succotash, Galatian goulash, Gnostic nut salad, and Pelagian pie. The Bible Buffet is a fully accredited ministry of the Church of Smorgasbordianism. You need to check it out, the Bible Buffet. Oops, that's not one of them. Okay. All right. Stop sharing. Okay. So...
The Bible Buffet.
Yes, and we're going to start offering coupons, I think, to that. So,
I think it's a good idea. So the Bible Answer Man had a big impact on your journey to the faith and your shaking out Watchtower doctrines as you listened and were challenged by what he was teaching and went to the library and checked out books.
Right, right. And then also, Dr. Martin used to talk about word faith teaching. And so I was always very alert to that in the church. And so every time I was in a Bible study group or at church, and, some people would be, doing this word faith stuff. And I would say, no, that's not right. And here's why. And people, were kind of put off by what I would do because, because they were getting it from, I guess, TV preachers or whoever, or TBN, or and so I would kind of try to gently correct people and show them that the word faith teaching is unscriptural.
Walter Martin was one of my first Bible teachers too. Back in 1976, somebody started giving me tapes of his lectures, and I often forget how much he impacted me because the first time I encountered Jehovah's Witnesses, I was in high school, and I had experiences with them before I became a Christian, and I had heard a lot about them after I became a Christian. And by that time, though I kind of felt I was ready for them, even just like maybe a year or so, or a year and a half after I became a Christian, until one day they came to my door. Actually, this wasn't quite a year. This was a matter of months. They came to my door, and there were two girls from my high school. They were in grades lower than mine, and they walloped me within a few minutes. I was like, I was sitting down sweating on the front step in front of my house while they stood there looking at me wondering, what's wrong with this guy? And that's when, in fact, that was when a friend of mine gave me my first Walter Martin tapes, and I was much better equipped. It answered a lot of my own questions, and he helps you get initially grounded in not just things you need to know, because he has a lot of tapes on other cults as well. That was Jehovah's Witnesses was a big one for me, but I listened to him on other topics, and it really helps to have somebody who's a guide to take you through it, and not only just for dealing with that one issue, but it just begins your discipleship process. It begins getting you acclimated to thinking biblically and getting your answers from the Word. And he did an amazing job of that.
Mm-hmm. So as we're kind of getting near the end here, Cynthia, as someone who was a Jehovah's Witness, who left and ventured into the world of the New Age for a while, and then left that and became a believer, and you've been a believer now for quite a long time, and do public speaking and writing and other kinds of things. For a Jehovah's Witness who's watching us and kind of thinking about what do I do next, what would you advise them?
Well, they could, I have a website, xjwslosangeles.org. They can go there. I have articles and links to various places. I have a blog. You can look me up. It's XJW's Los Angeles blog. It's through a blog spot. And or they can contact me through my blog, through my website. And, I run a support group here in Los Angeles. If they live in the Los Angeles area, they're welcome to come to my support group. We meet once a month, the last Sunday of every month. I've had people come to the group, they're crying because they don't know what to do. They're crying because everybody in their family is shunning them. They're crying because they don't know, where to go from, after leaving the watchtower. They don't know that there's going to be life after the watchtower. So, we gently, with our group members, we have people who I have one man he was a witness for 50 years. He's 83 now. And, we have very loving people in my group who can gently guide people.
Okay, that's important. Having others around you who have had that experience, who can share with you not only where they've been, but where they're at now and how they got there. There's also a conference in this year, 2016. This year will be October 7 through 9 in New Ringgold, Pennsylvania, the Witnesses Now for Jesus Convention. And anyone can go to our website and get the information on that, or email me directly. And we have resources on our website as well. So you're right. There's plenty of resources to help people, and they could contact us even anonymously. They could email me. I don't have to know your name, just have an email that I can respond back to and ask questions, and we'd be glad to do that on our website. So that's good. Well, Cynthia, it's been a pleasure having you again, and we'll do something else probably in the future.
Okay.
And Ron, as always, it's been fun. You want to give a word from our
from all those who made this possible?
Yes.
Right? Okay. Well, let's talk about those people. The unknown webcast here. We have our resident cult leader profiler is Neil before me. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just in Case. Our Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and D Opposer. Mormon Archives Manager is Polly Gummas. Our Liberal Denominations Bureau Chief is Lucy Goosey. Transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur. Our special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys, OD Humanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yoleg Pulling. Our technical assistance comes from Murky Research. Legal advisors are from the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham & Howe. Our grievance resolution director is Yvonne Pisami. Our director of privacy assurance is Wiretapping. Our original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Managed Care Productions, which are both totally responsible for its content, although you will never prove that in court. Alrighty, it is time.
It is time, and thank you both so much.
Okay.
Ron, we'll see you next week.
Alrighty.
Okay.